That's us recording. Welcome to this week's review call. We've got 3 UMIPs up for review this week. The first is SGDUSD. We don't have anyone from the team here, but Rainus, I know you reviewed because I saw some comments from you. Would you like to?
Yes, just shortly. So generally, this looks good. Some of cleanup of examples that use some other pairs, and question of whether or not we shall also add UMA pair because that the team had UMA pairs added in some of prior UMIPs. So just in case there is a use case for that, this will be good opportunity to do it.
Where's the bit about? Oh, okay. And there's a few bits where CAD and JPY are referred to.
Yes, I think that's just copy over from other examples, so it should be just cleaned up.
Your initial review just had those 2 points where there was 2 errors. There was 2 errors with SGD being something else. And also adding SGD UMA. Do we want to make that a blocker until we hear back from the team? Or is it good to know? Is it well enough formed, Rainus?
Regarding these examples, I think that's doable if the team is able to do it. I think it's not a major issue, so it should be possible.
So that is a goal contingent on the minor errors being changed, and advice to look into SGD UMA. Okay, now the next one was a VIX. Let me just put it up on screen. A UMIPs and SPY price identifiers. There's a few comments on this. In particular, Rainus, you picked up that there was no price feed. I've had some correspondence with the team, and they'd quite like to chat about the implementation, but they weren't able to make this time today. I think that pushing a week would be a good idea to allow the team to get some feedback and have a chat with Chandler about what they're building and how exactly it might be designed and constructed. What do others feel?
Laura, you mentioned you're in contact with the team. What contact? What have you been chatting to the team about?
It's really just been over discourse, where I've been explaining that, because it kind of impinges on TradFi, it's something that they might want to carefully design, and also pointing out the lack of price feed.
Okay, so technically, I think this UMIP shouldn't be passed because there's a lot missing, and if the team isn't here to do some adjustments, then I think this is the perfect candidate for them to punt on a technical level. The secondary part is, and you mentioned it earlier, that the UMA team would just, being myself and you, to get in contact with them on their intended use case. There are some non-technical issues that this UMA raises, specifically around the legality of using VIX identifiers and SMP identifiers, because those are considered traditional financial instruments and therefore fall into the regulatory scope of traditional financial instruments. And unless the team is aware of that, it should be worthwhile discussing that very bit with them. And if they are aware of it and want to proceed, we should take note of that, and it should be within the UMIP at the very least as a security consideration. And if they're not aware of it, it'll be in our best interest to let them know about that specific issue that they should look into. So I think this should be punted for the technical reason, and also the legality reason, with the legality reason being something that we should actually check in with the team if they're aware of during the course of this week.
They have posted up on Discourse about the products that they're going to build. If you haven't taken a look at that thread, it's worth having a wander over.
I will take a look at that, yeah.
Yeah, and they're going to try and find a time that suits both you and them to have just a general chat about how best to do this.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Renus, you in agreement with that decision that we?
Yes, that sounds reasonable. Also, the UMIP itself would need to add a bit more context on the intended use case and what type of contracts would be using, and especially it's not clearly stated whether or not it's EMPs or LSP type contracts, but I would assume based on the other comments that it would include some positions that could be liquidated, and in that case specifically inclusion of price feed implementation should be a blocker, and we should have it first reviewed on technical level.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we'll keep it on the back burner for now until you've had a chance to talk more about the team, get more details about their intentions and about the non-technical aspects, Chandler. Yeah, cool.
Perfect.
The last one was to add the DFX Polygon token. We already have DFX approved on Ethereum mainnet. This is the UPP just to add the Polygon token address with the same DFX. Chandler, anything you want to say?
Yeah, we're going to change it to not be a UPP and in fact be a standard vote. The reasoning behind that is that we need a governance action to add any new token collateral, even if it's been a previously approved token collateral, to the store contract. So this has now been amended from a UPP to a standard UMIP with the addition of, so it's a UPP and an UMIP, if we had to put that description around it. The UMIP is to add basically is to add the Polygon contract address, and the UPP very specifically is to update the fees and then just also add the Polygon details to the original UMIP. So that's kind of the route I went with. I feel like that, given the comments I've had externally from Sean and from Renus, I think that's the best compromise. But happy to hear anyone's thoughts on if this is the right format to go down.
Does that mean that there would be two votes, one for the UPP and one for the UMIP?
No, one vote.
One vote, which approves both. Which
will approve the store contract, right? And the UPP doesn't have a vote, so we naturally just update the
we don't vote on UPPs.
Normally we do. I think we have voted on UPPs as well.
Okay. Interesting. Then I would say that this vote is very specifically just to add the store contract, and then in the same breath so it updates the store contract on Polygon, and in the same breath updates the original DFX UMIP to include the Polygon address.
How urgent is it to get DFX approved on Polygon?
Fairly urgent. They would like to launch fairly soon.
I just wonder about the fiddliness of it, and yeah, I don't know. But it just surprises me because we do usually have a separate vote for a UPP. And while I totally understand why you would want this, if somebody did a pull request with 2 actions in it, so one for a UMIP and one for a UPP, and said, well, the UMIP covers the UPP, then people may want to vote for one, not the other.
I agree.
There's more precedent that I'm worried about.
I agree, and I think materiality here makes, if that's even a word, but the changes to in what we let's scratch the notion of a UPP because it's not really that. But what I've materially done is nothing more than just what is encompassed in the UMIP, right? I've only updated the Polygon address for the DFX token in the original UMIP, as well as just creating an UMIP for the DFX token. So on a material level, there is no decision whether you want to pass one or the other. And the only other added item, which may be worth changing, is I've updated the fee on the original UMIP to be in line with the Polygon price. And the DFX price has changed, and so I've updated the fee so we would have the equivalent of roughly $400 on both the Polygon and the original UMIP. So in essence, materially, I don't see there's too much change here, but I totally get your concern around, voting for one and not the other. But
yes, but in this specific case, I think it's absolutely requirement to not split these votes, because it should not be the case that fees on one chain could be like different from fees on other chain. That should not make sense. So from that perspective, especially for this particular case, there should be like only one vote to add this Polygon address and to update fees on also on the Ethereum chain, because otherwise there might be theoretical situation if one is voted in, other is not. We have different fee levels, and that's I think not normal.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think that as we spread out to different chains and potentially outside of Ethereum, we could run into this problem more and more. And we could well end up with these chains just because of oversight. Yeah, I just think that there's a bigger issue here than that this is a tiny little example of. And I just wonder whether we go ahead and do this and then figure it out, or whether we look into it before we actually start putting through precedents anywhere. And I think it's your call, Chandler, on, if this really needs done in this week's vote, we can do it. If it's something that they're going to launch in 3 or 4 weeks, I'd suggest we possibly push it a week and have a think about this.
Yeah. I think very specifically that the way that this is being done is going to happen more in the future, very specifically. And we need to be very clear on the distinction on what is acceptable to update in a UPP versus what needs a new governance vote. For the example of all the kinds of issues that you foresee, and I totally agree with that. What I think is important for us to realize here is what danger does this specific instance set precedent for, and I don't think it breaks too much of the governance process, mainly because we have a process by which each UMIP has a discussion, and the author, makes the case for each of those UMIPs. And if there's general consensus that this doesn't materially change the process, then we can accept that. But if it does, then we suggest to the team one needs to be an update and one needs to be an UMIP, and there are two distinct votes because what the contents of it is too distinct, right? And so that's what I see the community call for, that exact discussion where it's a consensus of deciding whether to split something or it actually makes sense for this to be one vote. And I would like more members of the team to weigh in that thought and basically just kind of feel out the route that makes the most sense to everyone on the team. This personally makes sense to me, the way I conceptually think about it. And I'm going to suggest that we do push this through because the DFX team is here. Like we are using them and they're going to launch on Polygon. The timelines on that, I am not 100% certain on. Now, we could say that something like this can happen in next week or in 3 weeks' time, but the risk of us running into not being able to launch their contracts for them when they're ready, because we're not certain on how to handle this, I don't think is a professional look for what UMA does. And so what I think we can do as a compromise is we can have a follow-up meeting, like very quickly, just for half an hour, where we discuss how do we want to handle updating previously passed collateral types when we're adding the second token on a different chain. And it can be basically the DevX and community team, and we don't even actually have to have a meeting. We can just have a quick little chat, and we can do that before the next vote. And changing this UMIP would take 30 seconds.
I suppose this is kind of the main call where we make those amendments, though, rather than having another decision between the community call and the vote. Because in this case, we would kind of leave the community call with no, although I suppose we do, well, I mean, usually we do have actual concrete recommendations as to whether it's a go or not. But as we'd be leaving the community call with, we might change it, we might not, and we don't know what exactly is going forward for the vote.
I think just from our perspective here, and this is how I would put it, this is a go conditional on whether we find it appropriate enough to update previous UMIPs that are related to this UMIP because it's the same token on a different chain, and if it's okay if we do it this route, or do we want to do a separation? I personally want to vote for the route that goes with the least amount of votes.
That sounds like a reasonable contingency. Venus?
Yes, that I think approach makes sense. So we can go and just subject to discussing the implications and the reasoning why and why in this particular case this should be like one vote.
Yeah. Is either of you two more in touch with how the blacklist is on, where we wouldn't need to add contract addresses in this manner?
Sorry, you broke up there on my side for a second. Say that one more time.
Sorry. We talked a while ago about, for the LSP, moving from a whitelisting system where we had to approve all collaterals on all chains to a blacklisting system where everything was permitted unless we specifically said, no, you can't do that. Are you aware of the Eng team moving in that direction at all, which would kind of eliminate this problem in the future?
Last I checked was that it was on the backlog. Where it sits in the priority and in which sprint cycle it's planned for, I'm not certain of yet. So that's actually a worthwhile thing just to pick up on.
Okay, cool. I definitely think we need a bigger chat around these issues. I mean, I don't really see a problem with it going forward because it seems eminently sensible. I'm just worried about the precedent that we might be setting because it doesn't, things that can seem really sensible for one small case can kind of blow up when you've got, you know, a number of different use cases relying on it. So I definitely think we need to chat around those bigger issues, but it's a goal contingent on us not finding a serious problem.
Agreed. And my personal opinion on this is just that's what case-for-case bases are, right? And I think this is one of those where it's sensible, so let's use our common sense and let it go through, versus something that isn't sensible where, for example, if I updated this UMIP and then I also updated the store fees for all 800 other or 100 other collateral types in the same UMIP, that doesn't make sense, right? And I think you know that's a bit more of a subjective line that we can draw, and it is literally a case-by-case system.
So yeah. So
right, thanks,
we've got one goal with minor contingencies, one which is being pushed to next week, and then the DFX, which is goal contingent on not identifying serious issues between now and the vote.
Cool.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. Bye.